The issue I'm looking at is bullying in schools. I'll be focusing on high school for the purposes of this assignment, but I do believe the system would be effective in lower grades and in post-secondary education. The root causes of bullying are many, but I believe it can be mostly boiled down to the fact that even though it's frowned upon, the punishments are just a slap on the wrist in the long term. To cause a real shift in bullying, the general mindset of the bystanders, not the bullies or the bullied, needs to be changed. Students rarely step in to aid because they feel that by doing so they'll then themselves become bullied. And that's the real core of this issue. Bullies prey on the fact that they will be unopposed in their actions and that no one will step in. They're always looking for superiority, they're never looking for confrontation. And they'll almost always flee if the tide turns on them and they can no longer be in a situation of superiority. So if more people stepped in to help to show that those actions are unacceptable and will not be tolerated in the environment, then we should be able to start to drive real change. I have a few questions to answer for this assignment, so we'll get right into those. The first one is, can a game be a therapeutic solution to this issue? I firmly believe a game can be a therapeutic solution to this issue. It's very hard to get people to step into uncomfortable situations, especially confrontational ones, without some kind of underlying incentive to do so. And games can provide an excellent structure to do just that through rewards for helping, like leveling up, experience. The people requesting aid through the game can rate the responders, whether they did a good job, whether they did a poor job, so on and so on. So given a structure like that, students may start stepping in to help in these situations because initially it benefits them through the game, but eventually the goal is for them to not care about the game and just step in because they know it's the right thing to do. So the second question is, what type of game could best suit this issue to provide the therapy? I think the game would have to be structured more as an augmented reality, kind of location-based game, much like Niantic's Ingress, which uses a real-world map overlay. And the point of the game is to go to locations where portals have spawned, and you have to capture those portals depending on what team you're on, or reinforce them and so on. But in this case, it would be a map of the school, and a map of the school, and it would have locations of students requesting aid because they're being bullied or whatever. The system could work using GPS or similar Wi-Fi systems like Google Latitude or Skyhook to alert responding students to the approximate location of the person in need of help. Now, an argument would be, well, students could use this to lure other students into a trap, or avoid class, to call friends to certain places. As true as that is, the only issue with that is when someone on the system requests aid, anyone and everyone registered on the system receives that request. So you can't specifically call a single person to you because if you do that, then people will show up who weren't intending to and would clearly see that you're abusing the system and would rate you poorly for doing so. So I think initially there would be a lot of attempts with this system to exploit it to those means, but eventually it would stop because they'd see it's fruitless. I hope. So the third question is, what game-related hardware would best suit this issue as a form of therapy? And I think it would best sit on mobile devices smartphones, iPods, any app-enabled device, tablets. Um, and then now an argument to that would be, well, not every student has one or has access to one, but that's very quickly not becoming the case. In 2012, a study was done to see how many students had, from the age of 13 to 17, had a smartphone or smart device or tablet, had access to or owned one. And at that time, 3 years ago, more than 50% of teens reported that they had one. And then when the study was again reconducted earlier this year in 2015, the number had gone up by another 25%. So over 3/4 of students in these surveys had some kind of smart device. So I think the argument stating that not everyone has one is not strong enough anymore. If it was 3 years ago, I'd probably agree, but not anymore. And especially going forward with the rate that technology is becoming cheaper and easier access to, the numbers are just going to go up, and eventually it'll never be 100% of students, but it'll certainly be well over 80, and that should be enough for this to go forward. So the fourth question is understanding that therapy relies heavily on intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. Which elements of each would you use, how, and why? So initially I would use extrinsic motivations to hopefully embed in students using the system with intrinsic motivations in kind of a Skinner box-esque way. It's kind of unethical, sort of. But the extrinsic motivations would be, like I said earlier, they'd be experience you'd gain for responding to situations. There'd be the peer-to-peer ranking after you responded. The people, pardon me, the people who responded with you can rate you. The person who called for help can rate you. So that would affect your ranking. And maybe this would have to be on a school-to-school basis. But there could be some kind of rank-based incentive system, like if you're at a certain rank, then you have access to this or whatever, something like that. So initially it would be a lot of extrinsic motivations to use the system, but hopefully eventually those reasons would become underlying, and just the want to help people intrinsically would become the overlying reason to use the system. Now, of course, not everyone will want to use the system. Bullies would think, well, if I'm on the system and I get caught being a jerk the one time and now my rating's really low, what's the point? Like, I'll never recover from that, and so on and so on and so on. But if they start responding to help requests and getting positive results, then their mindset will go up, and their ranking will go up, and hopefully it changes their mindset to feel better about helping people, and in turn better about themselves, and hopefully it helps that way. Now, of course, if there is some kind of issue where they're ranked really low, then potentially the system would alert the guidance counselors or the school therapist or something like that of this person's situation, and on a case by case help them that way. Which brings me to my next topic, is the teachers. A lot of teachers, I imagine, do not enjoy students using smart devices in their classroom because it does detract from learning, and I fully understand that. But I think, just from me personally talking to teachers on the issues of bullying, if it were something like this where the student, if they politely went, "Sir, ma'am, like so and so is requesting help, can I go help?" I would hope, anyway, that the teacher would be at least okay with it. Now, the other thing is, teachers would also have access to the system for sure, but they'd have more of an administration access to it. So they'd be able to see that the student isn't just pretending that someone's calling for help. They would certainly be able to see that something has been posted as well. Though this is kind of a system for teachers to be really hands off with, because it would be easy. Sorry. Yes, it's very hands off for the teachers because at the moment teachers just don't really have the legal rights to, even without being rough, to actually separate two people fighting or a bullying situation. They just can't do it. There's too much legal fluff. So if the teachers can promote students helping students, then that's just another tool they have, because currently their tools for aiding with bullying are almost non-existent, from what I understand. So the last thing I'd like to touch on is what this app can teach students. It could have kind of like almost tutorials in place that would teach de-escalation methods, how to properly approach confrontation, how to deal with escalated situations, stuff like that. And it could help students with other means of aiding other students in bullying situations, because the ultimate goal of this app is that the responders are responding peacefully and with passive force, and there's no fighting, because it's just the last thing I want to happen with this is to cause more violence. So yeah, in summary, I think that using video games as a method to help deal with the endemic bullying in schools would be a great platform. It's just starting to be really looked at. There's already an app similar to my idea, but it's not online. It's very much just an education game, and it's very much aimed at like preschoolers. It feels very childish, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. I just think that it needs to be explored more, and yeah, bullying is something that's really affected me, and if somehow I could have a part in driving change, that would be fantastic. So thank you for listening, and have a good one.